Hey, what's going on, guys? We're back with part 6, and so on the forum there was a suggestion to make the first game our platformer. So I'm gonna start moving away from sort of first-person stuff and um, see if we can get a nice 3D platformer game going. So in this video, I'm gonna see if we can go ahead and try and tackle player motion. Obviously, just side to side, maybe jumping if we get to it. So with that being said, let's make a new script inside of our player folder. Control Shift A. We'll make this a code file, and we'll call it platformer motion. Alright, so let's just go ahead and start up making this class as we would any other class. Okay, so before we actually start to begin coding, let's think about this. We want to move left when we press the A button, move right when we press the D button, and then if we get around to it, we want to jump with the spacebar button. So another things we want to consider are we want to be able to change the player's speed, maybe change the amount of distance it can jump, things like that. So before we go ahead and put in like the actual function, let's go ahead and make some new properties. So make a public float player speed. Let's default that to, I don't know, 5, and we'll do public float. Let's do I don't know, jump height. I don't know if we're gonna get to that, but we'll see. And then now that we've got those two, let's make our update function. And so first thing we want to do is we want to refer back to Unity's input class. We'll make a new if statement. So if input dot get key. We'll do key code dot a. All of these are built into the Unity engine. Then we're going to want to move left. So before we actually put that, we'll just put in a comment. Want to move left. And now we're going to extend from our if statement functionality, and we're going to make a new thing called an else statement. And what that is basically what it seems like. Else. You just type in else, and then you can put in parentheses or curly braces. What this does is it checks to see if this condition is true. If it is true, we'll go ahead and execute this code. But if it's false, execute this code instead. Okay. However, we don't want to run code if A isn't pressed. We want to run code if A isn't pressed, but D is pressed. So we'll do else if input dot get key code dot D. Now what this is an else if statement. That means that it'll first check and see if this is true and run this. But if this is false, let's fall back and do this check, and if this is true, then run this. If that is also false, we can also have just an else statement, but we don't need one for this sort of code. And so if it doesn't make too much sense, I think it's pretty simple, but if it doesn't make too much sense, we're going to be using a bunch of these, so you'll get it eventually. Want to move right. Okay, so now we're going to talk about vectors. I know we briefly talked about it in that spawning a cube video. Basically, a vector can be one of two things. It can be a position in space, defined by 3 coordinates. Its x position, its y position, and its z position. In Unity, an x position is its position left and right, its y is its up and down position, and its z position is its depth, or how far away it is. And the other thing a vector can be is a direction. So, like, you've probably heard it like in physics, a vector, those are, directions that can have a length, a magnitude. For this purpose, we're going to use it as a direction. So above everything in our update function, we're going to make a new vector3. And the way you make a new variable at runtime, instead of putting a property up top here, if we initialize a new variable inside of a method, it's called creating a variable at runtime. So we're going to make a new variable. It's going to be type of vector3. And you're going to make these the same way as these ones, except since they're not properties, they can't have these accessor values. You just ignore, public, private, whatever, just don't put that. And we'll call this direction. Let's set it equal to a new vector 3. Actually, cross that. Just for make it simple, we'll just do vector 3 dot 0. And I remember earlier I was telling you guys vector 3 dot 0 is the default vector. It's x is 0, its y is 0, and its z is 0. So this direction will point to nowhere right now. However, if we press the A button, we want to move left. So we'll do direction plus equals, or we'll do direction equals direction plus vector 3 dot left. Let's copy this, and we'll do the same thing over here. And then instead of left, we'll do right. Okay, so if we press the A button, our direction is going to be left. Else, if we press the D button, our direction is going to be right. And you'd think that because every time we press a button, it's going to add more directions to it. That's not true, because remember, this is called every frame. So every frame we're destroying direction and creating another one, and it's setting it to 0. So every time we're resetting this direction back to 0. Okay? Now, what happens if you press both of them down? Unfortunately, because it runs this check first, it'll automatically think even if you press A and D at the same time, it'll think you want to move left. However, we want it to just sit still. So if we just remove this else statement, we'll just make these two separate checks. So whether this is true or false, it'll still run this check anyways. And this way, if we add a left to it, if we're also pressing D, it'll add a right to it, and they'll cancel each other out. So our direction will be back to 0. Okay? Now we've created this variable called direction, but we haven't really done anything to it. We're not moving or anything. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a new property up top here, and we're going to call it, we're going to make it public character controller. And because this is not a struct like these blue ones, you can tell this is a class because it's green. We can't initialize it as anything because it's a serialized property. It's not like a number value. So this is something that we have to assign inside the inspector. Down here we can make controller.move direction. However, we also want to keep in mind we want to move it with a certain speed. So we'll do times player speed times time dot delta time. Now the reason we had to do this time dot delta time here is because remember this is called every single frame. We don't want to move that direction times the player speed, which is 5 every frame. That's a crazy amount of speed. That's really fast every frame. So what time dot delta time is, that's the amount of time that's passed in between each frame. So this basically normalizes the time. So now it's actually our player speed and not like 5 per frame. Now it's 5 per time unit. Okay? Now this is something you don't really have to do, but I like to do it so it's clean. Up top here, require component type of, you don't really need to worry about learning this kind of stuff. This is just personal preference. You make a bracket, require component type of character controller, and this just means that whenever you drag on this script onto a game object, if it doesn't already have a character controller, it'll automatically add it to us. Just a useful feature. So let's go ahead and go into Unity, and let's make a new game object, capsule, and let's just slap on a platformer motion, and as you can see, it's gone ahead and added in our character controller. I'm just going to remove our capsule collider because we don't need it, because our character controller acts as a collider and as something to control motion. Okay, and then obviously we have to drag our character controller onto the slot here. Let's hit play and see what happens. I'm hitting the D key, it's moving right. The A key moves it left. If I press both at the same time, it does nothing. So there we go, and as you can see, I can just add to our speed here. Let's make it 50. And it's a lot faster. So there we go, this is almost 10 minutes, so I'm going to keep this video short. Maybe in the next video we'll go ahead and see if we can tackle jumping. See you guys then.